Okay, so have you ever, like, struggled to give feedback at work? Like, you don't want to be a jerk, but you also want people to improve. It's this weird balance, right? Like, well, that's exactly what this book, Radical Candor, is all about. Uh, Being direct, challenging people, but also, like, genuinely caring at the same time. And get this, there's like an actual framework for it. The author, Kim Scott, she kind of breaks it down into these four quadrants of feedback based on how much you care personally and how much you challenge, like directly. So there's radical candor, that's like the sweet spot. High care, high challenge. Then you've got obnoxious aggression, all challenge, zero care. That's like your classic, jerk boss who just yells at everyone. Then there's ruinous empathy, all care, no challenge. That's when you're so worried about hurting someone's feelings that you just avoid giving feedback altogether, which honestly can be just as bad, right? Like you're not helping them grow at all. And finally, there's this sneaky one, manipulative insincerity.
That's where you're not really being genuine, like giving fake praise or apologizing just to, smooth things over. We've all been there, right? But the thing is, that just erodes trust. And trust is like the foundation of any, healthy relationship, especially at work. So how do we actually get better at this whole radical candor thing?
Well, Scott gives some pretty practical tips, and one that really stuck with me was giving immediate feedback. She compares it to brushing your teeth. Like you wouldn't wait until your teeth are all gross and decayed before you brush them, right? It's just easier to do it every day. And the same goes for feedback. It's so much more effective to address things as they come up, like just those little 2-3 minute windows between meetings. It doesn't have to be this big formal thing, just a quick, hey, I noticed this. What do you think? Just a little nudge. Another tip that resonated was this idea of focusing on the situation, the behavior, and the impact, rather than making it personal.
So instead of saying, you're always late, which feels kind of like an attack, you might say, hey, I noticed you were late to the meeting this morning. And that meant we had to spend like the first 10 minutes catching you up, which pushed back our whole agenda. Yeah. See the difference? It's not blaming or shaming. It's just objectively describing the situation and the impact. And you know what? I tried this with my team the other day, and it was, like, amazing. There was this one guy, let's just call him Steve, who was always interrupting people in meetings. It was driving everyone crazy. But nobody wanted to say anything because Steve's a nice guy. But then I remembered this whole situation, behavior, impact thing, and I thought, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So the next time Steve interrupted, I just calmly said, hey, Steve, I noticed you just interrupted Sarah. And that made it hard for her to finish her thought. And it kind of, derailed the conversation. And guess what? Scaife actually apologized. He was like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize I was doing that. I'm so sorry. And from that point on, he was like way more conscious of it. Yeah. It was amazing. Just that one piece of feedback delivered the right way, totally changed his behavior. So sometimes we just, overthink this whole feedback thing, make it way more complicated than it needs to be. But really, it's about being honest, being clear, and being kind. And when we can do that, we can create this like awesome culture of feedback where everyone feels safe to, speak up, learn, and grow, right? Something else that kind of blew my mind in this book was how much it talked about understanding what motivates each person on your team. Like we tend to lump everyone together, assume they all want the same things, but come on, everyone's different, right? We all have our own like values, goals, ambitions. And as a leader, it's so important to like really get to know your people, see what makes them tick, what gets them jazzed about work. And sometimes, get this, those dreams might not even align with your company. Like they might want something totally different, and that's okay. She actually like encourages managers to help their team find those opportunities, even if it means they eventually leave. I had this one guy, let's call him Mark, super talented designer, but always kind of restless, always talking about starting his own business. At first I was like, oh no, I'm gonna lose my best designer. Yeah. But then it hit me, like, why am I holding him back? If he's passionate about it, I should support that. Yeah. Right? So we started having these like career conversations, talked about his goals, his fears, what he needed to do to make it happen. And it was amazing. Just giving him that space to talk, to process it all, really helped him figure out what he wanted. Yeah, he did end up leaving a few months later, but we're still friends. In fact, I'm one of his clients now. So it's like by letting him go, by supporting his dream, I actually gained a friend and a client, right? And that's the beauty of radical candor, I think. It's not just about, giving feedback in the moment. It's about those long-term relationships, caring about their growth, even if it means like they move on. And you know what? It's not all about dreams and big ambitions. It's also about understanding what motivates people day to day, what gets them excited to come to work, what challenges them, what makes them feel, valued. And one thing Scott really emphasizes is giving specific, sincere praise. Not just like a generic good job, but actually noticing the little things, acknowledging the effort, the thought, and expressing appreciation in a way that feels, real. I actually learned this the hard way a few years back. I was managing this team of engineers, and I was so focused on deadlines, on shipping product, that I kind of forgot about the human side of things. I was just barking orders, not really taking the time to acknowledge their hard work. And I could feel it affecting morale. People were getting burnt out, feeling unappreciated. So I made a conscious effort to start giving more specific praise. Like, instead of just good job on that feature, I'd say something like, hey, I really appreciate how you went above and beyond to launch that feature on time. Those extra hours you put in, they really made a difference. And you know what? It made a huge difference. People felt seen, valued, and their motivation just shot up.
Yeah.
That's when I realized, praise isn't just some fluffy feel-good thing. It's a powerful tool. It can really impact people's performance, their well-being. And it doesn't have to be this big production, right? You don't need to write them a sonnet. Just a quick email, a Slack, even just, stopping by their desk and say, hey, great job on that presentation.
Yeah.
It's the little things. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? There's also the constructive criticism part, helping people improve. And she's got this great framework for it. It's called the Situation Behavior Impact Model. It's basically a way to structure your feedback so it's clear, objective, and actionable. So instead of saying you're always late, which is accusatory and personal, you might say, hey, I noticed you were late to the team meeting this morning. That meant we had to spend the first 10 minutes catching you up, which, pushed back our whole agenda. Huh? See? No blame, no shame, just the facts. And it's about being humble, too. Acknowledging that, hey, maybe you don't have all the info. I remember this one time I was working at this startup and I was so pumped about this new product idea. I sent this super long email to the CEO laying out my vision, all excited and everything. And then crickets, no response.
So I was like, okay, maybe he's just busy. But then a few days later, I bump into him in the kitchen and I'm like, hey, did you get a chance to read my email? And he's like, oh yeah, it was interesting. And I'm like, interesting? What does that mean? And he goes, well, it's just that, we're already working on something very similar. I was like, oh, ooh. Talk about embarrassing. I thought I was being so innovative, but I was totally out of the loop. It was a good reminder that even when we think we're right, we might be wrong, and we got to be willing to admit it. Speaking of mistakes, she has this really insightful section on handling, terminations. Never easy, right? Letting someone go is one of the toughest things a manager has to do. But she emphasizes not delaying the inevitable. If someone's consistently underperforming, despite your best efforts to help them, it's actually kinder to let them go sooner rather than later. Gives them the chance to move on, find a better fit, prevents the rest of the team from being dragged down. But she's also clear that the decision shouldn't be made alone. You got to consult with your boss, HR, anyone who can offer an objective view.
It's about fairness, due process, making sure you've really exhausted all other options. One thing I really appreciated about the book was how Scott acknowledges that radical candor isn't just about being a better boss. It's about being a better human, showing up authentically, being vulnerable, building those real connections. She talks about creating a culture of openness, inclusivity, where people feel safe to be themselves, to share their ideas, to challenge the status quo. She shares this story about Dick Kostla, Twitter's former CEO, who made a point of eliminating you guys from his vocabulary. He realized that even small things like that can unintentionally exclude people. It's a good reminder to be mindful of the impact of our words and to create an environment where everyone feels, welcome and respected. I remember I was working on this project with a really diverse team. We had folks from all different backgrounds, cultures, just walks of life. And I was so excited about it because, that diversity makes the work so much richer. But then I started noticing some people were hesitant to speak up in meetings, kind of holding back, And I couldn't figure out why. I thought I was being super inclusive. Then it hit me. I was using all this jargon, these acronyms that were specific to my field. And I was just assuming everyone understood. But of course they didn't. So I started making an effort to define my terms, use more plain language, be more aware of how my communication was landing. And it made a huge difference. People felt more comfortable sharing. And our meetings became so much more collaborative, productive. That's when I realized, inclusivity isn't just about having a diverse team. It's about creating that environment where everyone feels safe to contribute. She also talks about the importance of physical space, how even something as simple as a hug can be a powerful way to show you care. She tells this story about Stacy Brown Philpott, TaskRabbit CEO, who learned the art of hugging from this, like legendary Silicon Valley coach Bill Campbell. He was known for giving these really genuine hugs that just made people feel seen. But she also acknowledges that physical touch can be, tricky. Got to be mindful of boundaries, respect people's preferences. Like, I used to work at this company that had this super huggy culture. People were always hugging, hello hugs, goodbye hugs, congratulations hugs, everything. And at first I was cool with it. I'm a pretty huggy person myself. But then I started noticing some people were like really uncomfortable. They'd stiffen up, pull away. And it made me realize, like, oh, right, not everyone's into that. Got to respect that. So I started paying more attention to people's body language. And if I sensed someone wasn't into hugging, I just offer a handshake or a fist bump. And it's funny because once I started doing that, people actually started hugging me more. Like they could tell I was being respectful, and it made them more comfortable. So yeah, sometimes the best way to get a hug is to not force it, right? And when it comes to building those relationships, she really stresses this idea of being open, not like agreeing with everyone or pretending you don't have strong opinions, but being willing to actually listen to different perspectives, right? Engage in like healthy debate. Value everyone's contributions, no matter their background. Like I used to work with this guy, I'll call him Bob, who was like seriously opinionated about everything. Best way to code, best pizza, you name it. At first it was kind of intimidating, I was always afraid to disagree with him because I knew he'd like fight for his beliefs. But then I realized that passion, it was actually his strength. He cared deeply about the work, always pushing us to think differently, come up with better solutions. Once I stopped being afraid to disagree, our conversations became so much more interesting, more productive even. We'd debate ideas, challenge each other's assumptions. Even if we didn't agree, we always respected each other's opinions. And one thing I found super helpful was her advice on staying centered, especially when things get tough. She encourages us to figure out what works for us, meditation, exercise, spending time with loved ones, or just taking a few minutes to breathe, recharge. It's not about being perfect. It's about finding what helps you show up as your best self, both at work and in life. Like I remember this one time I was working on this super high pressure project. I was stressed out, working late, not sleeping well, just like on edge all the time. And I was talking to my friend about it, and she's like, you should try meditating. I'm like, meditating? I don't have time for that. I got a million things to do. But she insisted, just 5 minutes a day, it'll make a difference. It's like, fine, 5 minutes. What have I got to lose? And honestly, it was game changer. Those 5 minutes of quiet every day helped me clear my head, de-stress, just feel more grounded. And it made me a better leader too, more patient, more understanding, just, easier to be around. And I think that's a really important point. We're all human. We all mess up sometimes. But that doesn't mean we can't strive to be better, to be more compassionate, more understanding, more effective in how we interact with each other. That's what radical candor is all about, I think. Creating a world where we can be honest with each other, challenge each other to grow, and celebrate our successes together. One thing that kept hitting me as I was reading Radical Candor was how much traditional management advice is kind of manipulative, Like that whole sandwich thing, praise, criticism, praise, it feels so fake. Scott's approach is refreshing because she's all about being direct, honest, but also caring, empathetic, not sugarcoating, not trying to like trick people into doing what you want. It's about authenticity, vulnerability, building real trust. One thing that really resonated was her emphasis on soliciting feedback, not just giving it, but asking for it. It's so easy to get stuck in our own heads, assume we know best, and forget to ask for input. But she reminds us everyone has something valuable to offer. We can learn so much from listening, even from those who disagree with us. She talks about this technique she used with her team in Japan, where criticizing management was like a cultural taboo. She told them this story about Toyota and their red box. New employees had to stand there and criticize at least 3 things on the assembly line before they could leave. It was a way to encourage continuous improvement, make it safe for people to speak up, share their ideas, even if they were critical. And it worked. Her team opened up, shared their thoughts, their suggestions, and it made the company better.
And she encourages us to do the same, right? Create a culture where it's safe to challenge us, point out our blind spots, help us grow as leaders. She even suggests using tools like the Candor gauge to track our progress, make sure we're actually getting that feedback. It's about holding ourselves accountable, recognizing we don't have all the answers, and being open to learning. And it's not just about our teams, right? It's about being willing to give feedback upward to our bosses. I know that can be super intimidating. Nobody wants to be the one to tell the boss they're wrong. But Scott argues it's actually our responsibility. It's a sign of respect, of care, to be honest, even when it's tough. And she gives some great tips on how to do it effectively, like framing your feedback around the situation, the behavior, the impact, not making it personal. And she reminds us, even if our boss doesn't react well at first, it's still important to have those conversations. It might take time, but by being persistent, respectful, we can help create a culture where feedback is valued at all levels. At the end of the day, I think that's what radical candor boils down to.
Creating a world where we communicate honestly and openly, where we can challenge each other, help each other grow, and achieve amazing things together. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about your own communication style. At work, in your personal life, are you being radically candid? Are you caring personally and challenging directly? Or are you falling into those traps like obnoxious aggression, ruinous empathy, or manipulative insincerity? And how can you start incorporating these principles starting today? Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about trying to be better, creating a more honest, caring, and ultimately more fulfilling world. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into radical candor. I hope you found it as valuable as I did. And I'll leave you with this. Go out there and be radically candid. The world needs more of it.